mugwumps. They're everywhere. They're speaking out. Board meetings, City Hall, Town Square, Courthouse, State House, even the White House. They must be stopped. They are disruptors.
Welcome, everyone, to Mugwump Media. Welcome to the new town square here at Disruptor Central. My name is Juanita Bright, and sitting to my right on microphone number 2 is my husband and co-disruptor, Kevin. Say hello, Kevin.
Hello, Juanita.
Now, we've been discussing what has been going on at Jefferson City for the last week or two, and we have had the privilege of hosting a couple of amazing patriots, one from the Missouri Senate, Senator Mike Moon, and one from the Missouri House of Representatives, Representative Burt Whaley from District 138. And folks, we're going to be bringing you some other conversations with members of the Brave 10 from the Missouri House that Senator Mike Moon spoke about in his interview. And folks, if you have not heard that interview, I would recommend that you go on YouTube, Mugwump Media, and I would recommend that you listen to it. It's one of our longest interviews. I think it's 55 minutes. I'm telling you, we couldn't have cut a minute of it because it was very good. It was very informative. Mike has been there 12 years. He was in the Missouri House, then he went on to the Senate. And I'm telling you, that man knows how things run. And we're all going to have to learn how those things run. So if you get a chance at all, definitely tune in and check out Mike Moon's interview. And then, of course, Burt Whaley did a great one, too. And I want you all to meet all of the Brave 10 that actually come and interview and hear directly from them, from their hearts. I was just telling our guest today the neatest thing that I have found in these folks. Every one of them, they just have the neatest way. Most of them are Christians. Most of them are very driven by wanting to represent their constituents. They feel like they have what is it the Blues Brothers say, a mission from God.
They're on a mission
from God. So many of them they're not down here on the plane where they're scrapping around, trying to get whatever they can, trying to get power, trying to get whatever recognition. They're up above, and they are trying to do the will of the people. And I'm telling you, just from visiting back and forth with some of these folks, it's greatly encouraging. It's wonderful. Yes. I want you all to hear that too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Today, sitting straight across from me at microphone number 3 is a man that Kevin and I greatly admire, another member of the Brave 10, State Representative Bob Titus from Missouri's 139th District. And we are so glad to have you here today, Bob.
Welcome, Bob.
I'm pleased to be here.
Thank you, Juanita. Very good.
You are very welcome.
Yes.
Love it. Now, Bob is a Republican, and his area includes the western portion of Christian County, including Nixa, Clever, and Billings. Now, he's a proud husband to his sweet wife, Tammy, long time, too. All of us, you're close to our age. We've been married forever. You've been married forever, too, Bob?
Yes, this year, Tammy and I will celebrate our 41st anniversary.
Congratulations.
Like I said, we're all dinosaurs, but you know what? We're dinosaurs that need to spread. That needs to spread, those long-term marriages, partnerships.
No, I agree. It's God's plan, I think. And I don't condemn people who have difficult marriages. It is difficult in this day and age to do that. But I encourage people just to hang in there. And I think, and of course, I got 10 kids.
So, I saw that. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Your house. Was it crazy?
It was a very active house.
Like the family circus.
Yes, exactly. So, but the point I was going to make is really as my kids have aged, and my oldest is 39 and my youngest is 17, we really emphasize, look, it's important to be wise when you select your spouse because marriages are permanent.
Yes, they should be.
They are. And, for people who hastily make that decision or they get trapped into a relationship like that, it's not as fulfilling as it ought to be.
Absolutely.
But I think when you when you love God, and that is your priority in life, and you choose a mate, a wife or a husband
Yes.
who has that same priority,
Yes.
and the Lord leads you to join together in marriage, it's just a blessing. It doesn't mean life is easy, though, but it means the hardships are going to knit you together even more.
Yes.
And
goodness.
after 40 years, and I understand you've got a bigger number than that.
Yes.
But after
Yeah.
40 years, I mean, the relationship is so intuitive, and it's rich, and it never ever gets old. And Tammy and I don't mean this boastfully. I mean it as an encouragement to people who to plan for a marriage to last a lifetime, because I think
Absolutely.
it's just so rich. But
With a supermajority, you are in the party of the supermajority. And what's it like to have it so easy?
it's just a piece of cake. We just sit around making faces at the Democrats all
So how are you keeping yourself busy up there?
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No, and this is this is a real tragedy, I think. This is the reason why I'm in Jeff City. Honestly, if things were easy, I don't think I'd go back. I would prefer to stay at home.
Wouldn't it be nice?
Yes, but the fact is the need is horrendous, and I know Mike spoke to that too. Being a supermajority, we should be passing very, very conservative legislation. I think Missouri should be a leading state with that, but it doesn't turn out that way. And what our supermajority allows us to have is at least it's translated to be very centralized leadership.
Yes.
In both bodies of the legislature up there.
2 people run the House and 2 people run the Senate, basically.
For the
correct?
most part, yes.
Yes.
It's true. And so, the rest of us are all kind of extras there. You might say, yes, we're dependent on making votes, and what the centralization of leadership does is to control how those votes happen and how those votes are made, and what will pass and what won't pass. And and it's sad because I think the conservative legislation would pass.
Yes.
Unfortunately, far too often, because we don't have super conservative leadership, those are kept on the back burner and only used as baits or enticements to pass other bills that are not so good for the people in our state, I think.
So basically what happens is you have all these people filing bills, but really most of those never make it to the light of day. They end up just sort of sitting there, timing out.
No, that's true. And let me put it this way. I have a real interest in reforming the way the legislature works for the people of Missouri, because to me, that's what the Constitution intended.
Yes.
I think that's what God intended too.
Me too.
And so,
yes.
So that's where my heart is.
Yes.
And I'm learning as I go.
Oh yeah.
Where those opportunities exist, but the way I think about it is we have a problem at the center, and that's the centralized leadership that won't do the big, bold, conservative things. But what they do is they dispense opportunities to, I think, mostly conservative Republican representatives, the opportunity to sponsor conservative bills, and essentially what they're allowing them to do is to nibble around the edges.
Yes.
And then our well motivated, I think our good intentioned Republicans, my colleagues, they diligently they'll work to get those bills passed, but essentially they're just nibbling around the edges, and it never really transforms the real problem. And the real problem, I think, is the fact that I don't think we're serving the people of Missouri like we ought to in our
It's hard to make sense of. Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana. I love listening to him. You know what? Sarcasm's quite a tool. Humor is even a more valuable tool, and he has a way of explaining things. But I was thinking about our state as he was talking. But there's a shift going on in the capital, in our national capital. There's an exposure that's been taking place. But one of the things he said, I've been in the Senate for 8 years. In dog years, he said that's 56. He always goes ahead and relates this to something real that we all understand. And he said he went on and mentioned that it's true. There's a Washington bubble. He said this place is different. He mentioned that it's deeply weird. He said, for one thing, common sense in Washington is illegal. I love that. I can't think of a better way of saying that.
I came in earlier and he was sitting there writing it down and watching him. Our yellow pads.
And what you're talking about, he said there's a Washington way of doing things. And when things aren't done that way, many of them get excited, and not in a good way.
Well, I understand it's far worse in Washington than it is in the state of Missouri. And the good news there is I think we have a chance to turn it around.
Yes.
And I don't know about Washington, D.C. I'm going to have a bigger vision to change that place around. But the fact is, I think there's hope.
Yes.
And
people need to wake up. That's the thing is people need to hear what's going on. That's why we started this podcast. And I think that there are little sparks everywhere that people are starting to spread news and, to tell people what's really going on. And, I think it's a God thing. I really do. I don't know if you feel this way, but I was watching something on, I don't know if you ever watch, I love the Victory Channel. I like to watch it. I like their news. You can actually believe it. I don't listen to much news anymore. They're a bunch of liars. You know that, Bob.
Yes.
But this one, it's a show called Flashpoint, and it says, has Uniparty moved from D.C. to the States? It's an interesting thought. There's a lot of stuff going on. Did you know some of the same stuff is going on in Texas? Have you heard that?
Oh, yes. Because I'm a member of the Missouri Freedom Caucus.
Yes.
And one of the reasons I joined that is because, these monsters that we battle here in our state are not unique to us.
No.
And they exist in every state, and that's one of the things that we study. In fact, we'll have last year we had a conference where all the Freedom Caucuses from every state got together, and this is the things that we were talking about.
Yes.
And,
awesome.
And there's, because, we don't want to have to reinvent the wheel. And the fact is,
that's smart.
We can just use the same tactics, and by tactics, I mean just holding our posture against the wind of pressure from the swamp. And, and it's amazing. The stories I hear from other states, you don't have to do that much because these people in leadership, by and large, lead by intimidation, and it's not in their manual what to do if people won't follow.
Right.
And what if somebody stands up to them? What do you do then?
And
absolutely
disruptors.
Right.
Disruptors. Ironically,
everybody's talking about it. Everybody.
There's a word. You know what? The Democrats have always had a buzzword, and back in the Obama days, every morning you get up, you watch the news, you listen to one news channel, and whatever word they used, the next news channel used it, and the next one. At the end of the day, everybody was using that word.
Project Mockingbird. Yeah.
So you know what? Maybe we can turn that around because from Missouri, I look at what's going on nationally, and I'm amazed at how many people are from our state that are up there involved in what's going on up there. This turnaround that's taking place. We've got Eric Burleson. We've got Josh Hawley.
Will Scharf.
Yeah, a man from Missouri. We've got three men from Missouri up there, and you know what? Every one of them is solid, and they are conservative through and through. Eric Burleson and Josh Hawley, anytime you go anywhere, you're going to hear a little bit of gospel, you're going to hear a lot of truth, and you're going to hear a lot of quotes. And those quotes come from our founding documents, and they come from the Bible. And Eric Burleson in a meeting one time, I remember he got up and somebody said, "So why are you a politician?" And Eric had an answer without even thinking about it. He'd already considered this, but he said, I'm a politician because I'm a Christian. We're to influence the world. And Eric knew that, and that's been his mission. And we're seeing so many men showing up in this day and time that their mission is to change the world. And that is our role. That's our commission. We're supposed to go out and share the good news.
Well, and I would mission is a good word for it, but I would almost say an obligation.
Obligation,
and
yes.
I'd say that for every Christian person.
Let's just go ahead and say it simple, duty.
It's a duty.
That
absolutely.
is our duty,
and
yes.
Because we have, we know what happens. We live in a fallen world.
Yes.
And if you don't hold it accountable, then things will go awry.
Yes.
And I understand people being preoccupied by family, their work, and their churches. I totally get that.
Yep.
But it's so important to have a safe government. And folks, right now, we do not have a safe government.
No, that's very true.
And thank goodness Donald Trump got elected, because I feel like we're headed in the right direction.
Yes.
We've got a covering above us now. God has placed a covering nationally, and I think that's why we're seeing the crazy stuff spreading to the states. I think that now we've got to work it out state to state.
Yes.
I think this is the time. I don't think any of this is accidental.
This is a time to engage.
No, I agree.
We
And I
must
think
engage.
for people in the grassroots, the voters, the people pay the taxes.
Yes.
To react to the last 4 years we had with Biden, or even to throw back to the 8 years we had with Obama.
Oh, yeah.
We need to have a very sober sense
Yes.
that our liberties are very perishable.
That's why we saw the results on November 5th.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
One of the things I was going to ask you, one of the things that we heard the first time we ever heard you speak, and that was when I figured out you pretty much said what you thought. I thought, okay, I can handle this. But you got up there and you started talking. You were very vulnerable. You opened up about how even you had been not necessarily fooled, but sort of propagandized. Mike Moon talked about it. He said, I escaped that because I didn't come until April into the House. So because of that, they wine them, they dine them, they take them around on a bus, they show them all this money they're spending. Now, you want to make sure you don't stop that. We got to make sure we keep funding this. But you talked about that. You said the first year you came in, you had, great intentions. You got some advice from some folks in the House that were like, well, we got to, this is how you do this, and this is our process. And it didn't take you very long to figure out that that was not the right thing. Tell us about that.
Okay, yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, in orientation, when I was a freshman, they're basically telling us to sit down and shut up, and to just don't have a lot to say in the first year or two. Kind of get a sense for what the flow is and how things are done. Okay, I'm a rookie, right? So I can buy that, and it takes a little while to figure out what's going on, but I don't think they were being genuine. What they really wanted.
You think?
What they really wanted is for us to keep our own ideas and our own initiatives out of play.
Because they knew better.
Well, yes, because why do people run for office? I mean, some people run for office for the wrong reason, but by and large, I think people who run for office understand that there's a need, and they do it to serve the people back home.
Yes.
And what happens is that gets undermined.
Yes.
And pretty much those people are told, look, we'll let you be the person you campaign to be, but you've got to do this or this or this, and don't say this.
Right.
Now, there's a real issue with that let you be.
Yes.
We didn't send our representatives up there to get permission from them. We sent our representatives up to the state to represent us, and we have a voice that they're supposed to share and vote for up there.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it puts a representative in a really tight spot if they're aware of what's going on.
Yes.
Because, they go up there to represent the people who elected them.
Yes.
But they're instead to make a contribution to what goes on up there, you've got to instead represent the swamp. You've got to represent the powers that be, and to play the game,
right?
You've got to play by their rules.
Yeah, yeah. So you figured it out. Didn't take you long to figure it out.
Yeah, well, what I haven't figured out fully is the solution to that
Oh,
yet.
I know.
But
Because then you pay for it, too.
I'm just stubborn and ornery enough that I'm not going to play along. And
Good for you.
Unfortunately, at least it's left me pretty quiet in because how do you take down a stronghold?
Yes.
Obviously prayer is a big part of it.
Yes.
But,
yes.
Yes. You've got to be diligent.
Yes.
And you've got to be purposeful in the actions that you take.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so
wise as serpents, harmless as doves.
exactly.
What you said is key, too.
Yes.
In various things that we've been involved in, this library stuff, you literally outlast them. You just keep showing up.
You do.
And you keep standing up and speaking.
Yes.
And pretty soon they call you mean names and run out and quit. So
It's just faithfulness. And,
Yes.
And I guess the
Yes.
best way I can describe it with politics is you need to go up there with tectonic force.
yes.
There's you can think in terms of earthquakes and tremors. I mean, obviously, if you're creating earthquakes, people are going to react in fear.
Yep.
But if you can do tremors and push things in the right direction, I mean, tectonic forces are amazing. They build mountain ranges.
Yeah.
They separate continents.
Yes.
And I think that's the kind of force we need from the people back home to change our state government
Yes.
into what I think it was intended to be. And then our federal government, what it was intended to be. It's to serve our freedom
Yeah.
and not necessarily control what we do.
When we went up on January 8th, we were there, and we saw you. We were there, and one of the things that angered me the most is when the speaker was elected, all he could talk about was our democracy, our democracy, our democracy. I just want to scream when they start that. This is a representative republic. And you know what? I don't know, that kind of, because that's how you guys are treated. You're kind of ignored as a representative. The people, whenever your things don't make it to the floor, whenever you don't have the ability to push things out there to be voted on, who's not being represented? The people you're representing. That's the whole thing. But yeah, that drives me
And
nuts.
common sense gets left behind, too.
Oh,
And
yes.
That's the real tragedy.
Duh, yes.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you too. This is another important question. I've got a couple of things. I told Bob I saved these for him because I think he's going to answer them beautifully. The initiative petition. I talked to so many people, and nobody really understands what it is, where it came from. I know it's been around for a while, like 40 years, something like that. And basically, I'll let you explain how it started out and what it's for. But we need initiative petition reform, and like 7 years, they've tried to pass this initiative petition reform. And that's an inexcusable failure for that reform bill. It did pass one house this time, didn't pass the other, but that was because, you were one of the people that was in there trying to make it work. I know you were because I heard that you were, and I'll let you talk about that. But I just want people to know the reason that we have Amendment 3, which is arguably the worst abortion bill, really, in a state house across the nation. It's horrible. It's so vague. Basically, if somebody wanted to twist it, they could get a doctor's note and they could abort a child the day that it's ready to be born.
It's horrendous. And
it's
what
horrendous.
It will allow.
Yeah. That's why we have recreational marijuana. That's why we have $15 an hour and climbing minimum wage. That nobody understands it. You saw this happen. Tell us. Can you explain some of this? Break it down for us.
Okay, well, let me start by explaining what initiative petition is. Okay, so there are different ways to get laws on the books, statutes on our book, and that's the legislature. And so it gets a bill gets passed by the House and the Senate, and then the governor signs it. It becomes a law. Especially if you think about it, I mean, now Missouri is controlled by Republicans, but there was a time when Missouri was not controlled by Republicans. And for us freedom-loving people. I think it was important that we have a mechanism to get laws changed, and the laws that get changed by initiative petition go right to the Constitution. So I think that it's an important feature to have in there. Some states don't have that at all, but there are powers that want to make sure that we keep the initiative petition process the way it is right now, and the process that we have right now has brought us like Amendment 3 and the minimum wage and other things too, like forcing, basically eliminating right to work in the state, our marijuana laws that are very liberal, and I think probably what is like the lottery system and other gambling related type activities.
One of those was passed this time.
Yes, and so there are powers that want to make keep that avenue open, and I certainly don't want to eliminate it, because I think should the Republicans lose power, the power of the state government, then we would want an opportunity, a way to correct errors to the Constitution. But the problem is, we can see by some of these petitions that have passed that it's far too easy for outside interests to bring in boatloads of money into our state and get things passed and really do a poor job of educating people. And in fact,
they lie,
deceiving people.
Yes,
and getting things passed. Ideally, every voter would be informed and know the full breadth of what these things are and what they mean to the state. But in realistic terms, that's not possible. And so I think what initiative petition reform would do, and there's a couple of different ways to go about that, what the establishment likes. I almost called them the swamp. I'm trying to be nice. What the establishment likes is just simply raising the threshold to something like 60%. But the problem is, if we have a bill like that, it's not natural for voters to vote away their right or their control of the state government. So I don't think, in all likelihood, that probably would not pass. There's another concept too, and that has to do with, it's similar to what's it called, the college, the electoral college, right?
Yes.
Right.
Each county.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Each county having equal weight by their population.
Exactly.
Yes.
And if you look at the results of Amendment 3, there were actually very few counties, very few places in the state that put that over the edge.
I think it was like 104 against it. Or I could be wrong, and there was 7 or 8 that were for it, which would have been around the cities.
Right.
Is that basically kind of correct?
Right.
So I'm not sure the exact number, but
I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head either.
Most of the state, the rural counties were against it.
Yes. And so the concept that I'm describing now is called a concurrent majority, where basically it has to pass, and you could use congressional districts, you could use state senate districts, you could use House districts.
Yes.
But basically it has to pass in a majority of whatever
Oh my gosh,
body
that
you
would
use,
do it.
right?
It's like the Electoral College.
It is, and I think what that does is it just means it keeps the Missouri Constitution from being radically changed by people who live in areas of very dense populations.
Being run by St. Louis and Kansas City. Yes.
Yes. And
yes.
Because they, I don't. Well, I'll just put it this way. I think that people who live in rural areas are closer to common sense
Right.
closer
Right.
to a love of liberty, and they're not so fearful about their neighbors, and they're not so preoccupied with trying to control their neighbors' liberties.
Well, history, Lot, he had a tendency to go to the urban areas, and it never went well for him. Abraham went ahead and went to the plains.
Yeah.
There was
a good example.
It's that historically, if you go through the Bible, all the issues are generally centered around urban areas,
What's
and it's
funny
not
about
that they're.
scripture? Remember when we read it, and it reads that Lot talked to the angel, and he said, "Well, can I just go to that small city? It's just a small city." So he went to the small city, and within just a few verses, he was moved up into the hills. Mm-hmm. He probably couldn't handle it.
Right. In its purest form, in its ideal form, the legislature is a way to consider a deliberative body where they can consider and they can vet ideas like that and really determine what serves the interests of the citizens better than anyone else. And I think in its pure form, I think it works extremely well for that. And it's like, and a good example would be a household. You don't let the kids vote on what you're going to have for dinner every day.
Right.
They need to have their various food groups, and
right.
they can't have ice cream for dinner every night. And so in that case, the parent would be the representative of the household that's making the decision. And whereas I wouldn't carry that analogy over to say where somehow a state representative or a senator is a parent to the people they represent, I would say that they can make rational decisions and foresee where some ideas are going to go awry. And basically for the good of the taxpayer, not let it go that way. But the reason we get a lot of these initiative petitions is because I think the legislature's not functioning as it should, and we get outside interests that want to force ideas on us and order. You just have to have order, and we have a God of order, and
sure.
we need order in every part of our society.
Talk about 7 years, common sense, initiative petition reform. All these things would stop. We wouldn't have these crazy things. Outside groups from Washington, D.C. and out of the country coming in and paying for commercials and paying all these people. A lot of those kids were being paid $30, $35 an hour. And they would come in on buses. They had job fairs. To me, this is election interference, truly, because it is not from Missouri. So we talked just a little bit about this before. Whatever, and I don't know what you want to share. 7 years, like 7 times this has gone through. Why have they run the clock out? Why would supposedly conservative legislators not want this to come in? Why? Why do you think it is? Is there something nefarious? Is there money?
The short answer is money.
Okay, that's what I want to know.
Let me take the long way around now.
Okay.
And I can mostly speak to the last couple of years because I wasn't in the legislature prior to that.
Yeah, no.
But I too have been told that initiative petition reform has been a priority in prior legislators, like 7 or 8 years ago, and if the prior years were anything like the last 2 years, what happens is it's used as an incentive to pass other things first. And so if it was a priority, if it was important to me and I had total control of it, I would pass it first.
Right.
Just in good order. Instead, what happens is it gets dangled in front of the representative and say, "Well, we're gonna do that, but we have to take care of this first and this first." It ends up languishing, and then we take care of it in like the final weeks of session, and then it just gets lost in the dust of all the activity, and what I'll say is I think that's an intentional act on the part of leadership, because there are moneyed interests that support candidates to run, and especially people in leadership
Lobbyists.
have ambitions for higher office.
Yes.
And it takes a lot of money
Yes.
to run. And so the money comes in, and our leaders aren't candid.
Yes.
And you spoke to this earlier, I just tell it like it is, because
Yes.
I don't think I'm smart enough to shape the truth or misshape the truth and get away with it. I just want to be plain. But by and large, I think people who seek leadership positions are, like I said, leadership and power is an opiate. They aren't so truthful about what their intentions are, and they say their intention is one thing, but their actions tell you something different.
Simply put, at the end of the last year, the last session, when the clock was running out, a conversation with anyone there would be talking about how important it was we got that through, and we're working on it. We're doing everything we can, and it is important, and they agreed. And so I can assume that the first conversation that was had about any bills or anything, when everything come back in session this year, was the first thing is, we're going to pick up where we left off, and we're getting right on that initiative petition. We're going to get that carried forward right off.
Every year, it's a top of the priority list.
And then what happens?
Well, things start moving, and they start considering bills to that effect, and then they end up getting delayed and delayed, and then and then of course there's negotiation with the other body, the other legislative body up there, and it gets passed back and forth, and you hear things like, well, the Senate's not going to approve that, and so we need to do something different.
We can't because they. We can't because them. We can't because, well, it's just we've got to take care of this first.
Well, I think they're just delay tactics, really. And certainly there is disagreement between the two bodies oftentimes. And in the Senate, the senators have quite a bit of control over what goes through their body. And so if you have senators who are, very opposed to an issue, they can filibuster it, and they will. So, to me, that's not an excuse. You just do the right thing. You put the bill together, and you send it over to the Senate, and then it's on them. It's their conscience that has to deal with doing the right thing.
Well, and that's where it died last year on the last day.
Yes, and
they just left.
Here's the thing: is if it was going to die, we should have known in March that it was going to die.
Yes.
But we waited until the last couple of weeks, and
so frustrating.
Well, it is, because everyone had high hopes. In fact, we pretty much expected and anticipated that we would get that done, and we will have done the right thing. And they're always, one thing about us politicians, we always have someone to blame close by, and so. Yeah, that's, we're good at making those kind of excuses. And I mean, it's a shameful thing that we didn't get that done, because it opened the door wide for Amendment 3 to pass.
Oh,
and now we're having to deal with, the impact of that.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, this year, now it's a priority in legislative bodies to do a fix for that. And so keep your eyes open. Let's see. Does that fix come? What is the fix going to allow? How compromised is it going to be? Right now we're being told, look, hey, we're going to have a bill that allows abortion in the case of rape and incest.
I just got to say, a fix was available last year. A fix was available the year before. A fix was available the year before. This is when does this end, and where do we draw the line, and how do we address this?
Well, it's what we need are courageous representatives and senators, and I think we're
disruptors.
Blessed. We're blessed in our area.
Yes,
with
Yes.
I think representatives and senators that are
Yep.
nailed down to the ground. So they're just good people, and I think they do know better, and they see through it. But it would be good if we had more of that kind of support statewide. But in this, I don't know why it is, and down in the Ozarks, we're more insistent on that.
Yeah.
And there's certainly other parts of the state where
Common
they have
sense.
the same way of thinking, but by and large, it's the exception rather than the rule. But I tell you what, somebody who's seeking reelection will not do the opposite of what their constituent want if they think their constituents are paying attention.
I agree. And that's one of the reasons that we started this podcast, is to try to get information out, for sure. I have one more question for you. And this has all been very informative. Tell us what happened. Tell us about what happened in the House Speaker's race this year, from your perspective, when you and 9 other people stood alone. You swam upstream, Bob.
Okay.
In rejecting a candidate for Speaker who was one of only 3 Republicans who voted against the SAFE Act. And of course, that was what protected children from receiving transgender surgeries. Why would a Republican think that that was not a good thing? He's a squishy as far as abortion. I know that whenever he at one point, he's actually on record as saying that he felt like Missouri's abortion ban was too much. It was extreme. I know he's on record as saying that. I think he tends to be a little squishy on that. And every Democrat voted for him, and he actually voted a third, exactly 33% of the time in 2023 with the Democrats. I'm at a loss to understand why someone like that, who obviously doesn't have the same priorities as most of the people in Missouri, would be put in charge of what actually gets to the floor. That escapes me. The gentleman that you voted for, Justin Sparks, has a 93% conservative voting record, and he is extremely pro-life. We've heard him talk, and he's something. Talk about that.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm not going to judge or interpret or question the speaker's motives. And the speaker,
but we know his
case,
record.
Yeah, the one who won
Yes.
was John Patterson. Mm-hmm. And he actually, and I don't mean this in a way that I'm defending him at all, mm-hmm. He actually represents his district pretty well, because he lives in a district where it's 50-50 Republican and Democrat, and he barely won re-election. And some of the comments he made about, like, Amendment 3 and abortion were to people in his area. So he's representing his area. Now, my real question is, why is he representing the Republicans?
Right.
Right.
And that's my point.
Right.
We know his voting record, Yeah,
right.
I agree.
So obviously that's what I thought. And I think when it came down to it, my final analysis is, look, do we want a more Republican, or do we want a more conservative House, or do we want the status quo? Because this is what we've gotten year after year after year.
Yes.
Our leaders who are really representing both sides of the table in some sense.
Yes.
And with a Republican supermajority, given that the Republican platform is very, very conservative, why do we not have a very conservative House and a very conservative Senate? And I think by and large, and we saw it this time around too, some of the conservatives who had some seniority in the House chose not to oppose John Patterson for leadership.
Yes.
And we had a few people who had considered, and actually one guy put together a run against John Patterson for the speakership position. But in the case, both of these people ended up running for Senate instead because an open seat was in their area. And so, and that was 50%. One of them won, the other one lost, but both of those would have been very good conservative speakers. But when they dropped out of that race and didn't file for it, here's I think where the trouble started is we did not have any conservatives step up to fill in the gap. And I didn't either. So, but I was a freshman, But so I'm as responsible as anybody else who didn't step up to oppose the speaker at that time, because we elect the House, or I should say the caucus or Republican caucus nominates the Republican speaker a year ahead.
Yes.
And so we did that, and at that point, there was another guy running against Patterson, but in my opinion, he was even less conservative. In fact, he came into I won't say his name, but he came into my office. He said, I guess he didn't know me very well. He said, the problem we have here is just, people are doing too many conservative things. The conservatives are getting their way too much. And I'm not talking about Patterson. I'm talking about the other guy who ran against him. So we had Patterson and a guy to his left, and then basically nobody to the right. And so Patterson, Patterson's had a number of years to be there to build allegiance from the people he served with, and he's certainly a very intelligent man. And without conservative opposition, he walked into it. And so what happened, and this is apparently never been done before. We have the whole body needs to elect the speaker.
Yes.
When the new session starts.
Yes.
And that's exactly what we did this year. Just shortly after the November election, Justin Sparks announced that he would then oppose Patterson as a conservative. And the reason he was doing that is because nobody else did. And he felt, especially given the vote that you made reference to in some of Patterson's public comments, Justin felt that was important.
Yes.
To have done, and honestly, I did too. I'm so glad that he ran, because I think he had a strength and a drive that came from God to do that. And as we know, looking back, it didn't mean he was going to win, but it did mean it opened up a lot of conversations, and believe it or not, I think it was a godsend, because
it lit some fires.
It lit a fire, and I think it made the people of Missouri, the conservative ones, more aware of the need to be involved. But another thing that it did is it really modified the promises that the Speaker-elect, John Patterson, was making to people in order to shore up his support. And so I think that's why a number of things are being done now, because he's choosing to honor some of those commitments. So that's a good thing. And I praise him and honor him for doing that. But again, it's the choice, as I recognize it, was against having a more conservative House or the status quo. So what we have now is a status quo that is giving concessions to the conservatives.
That's feeling pressure. And I'll tell you, I don't know that this is the case or not, but I just feel like, kind of intuitively, that I think you're right. I think they're feeling a little bit of headwind, a little pressure. There was a petition, an online petition that went around, and the last I heard, somebody said that there were a bunch of people, Kevin and I did, that basically was protesting against this person who didn't necessarily, and I'm like you, I don't know the guy. I'm sure he's not a bad guy, but he doesn't align with the GOP, Missouri GOP platform. And he doesn't align with the majority of Missourians. We're really a deep red state. And there was this online petition that went around, RePACMO put it out, and everybody signed it. There was a bunch of them, hundreds, I guess. And it said that it was going to send it in to the offices. Don't know who they went to. But that and the fact that people showed up, quite a few people showed up with signs that said, "Vote Justin Sparks. Change the rules, change the game." Whenever we got to the Capitol, I was amazed at all the people walking around. And it was everybody. It wasn't just older people. It was younger people. It was everybody. A lot of people. And there were Capitol Police there, that were telling us that there were 2 rooms that we were put in. I don't know whether this was traditional or not, but it felt like we were being kind of shoved out of sight of the cameras. Don't know. That maybe they do that every year. I don't know. But there was a definite feeling that we were an embarrassment, that nobody wanted the cameras to see. And I just had this feeling, this underlying feeling, that they knew people were going to show up, and they knew that there was a little bit of rabble-rouser that was people that were upset, that had been upset by this. The flame was lit, and I think they know the flame was lit.
Yes.
Yes.
No, I agree. Well, let me say this. I think to the Republican caucus, or as conference is what they're wanting to call it now in the House, I think it's important to them to show unity and have some strength in what they do. And I think that way they draw more support, more trust from the people of Missouri. I get that. It's like a team of any sort going into the game with a high degree of confidence. So I get that, and they're uncomfortable with dissension, and they don't want the suggestion that things are out of whack or imperfect to be, I guess, to be plainly visible.
Well, I got news for him. The curtain was pulled back. And some people saw some things. And we're letting people know that.
Yeah.
A perspective. You talk about unity. The strongest unity I've seen over the last several years has been the liberals in Washington and that Democrat Party, because when they walk in a room, they vote against everything conservative. They vote for everything liberal. And there's rarely one or two. We've had some defectors. We've had some disruptors. You know what? Some, I guess, the old time liberals like Harry Truman. We've got them. And some of them are being appointed to the cabinet because they have something to offer. We don't have to agree on everything to be on the same side. But I get concerned for perspective when the liberals in our state, and there's good ones, there's bad ones. I don't know very many myself. I guess I've had a pretty sheltered life. I live around mostly people that value, abortion's just not something that we're ever going to be okay with. That is a hill we will die on, and we'll continue that. There's no compromise. Our goal is to stop killing babies. But anyway, when the election took place for the speaker or the vote, I was shocked that every available Democrat vote was for him. Now, nationally, all the appointees, you can pretty well guess, well, how many Democrats are there? That's how many votes there's going to be against. You just got to count how many till you get enough conservative votes to know you go ahead and override that number and hope you don't have any Republican defectors. But when he got every available Democrat vote, should that concern me?
Yes, I'd be happy if I got. I'd be happy if I got 0 Democrat votes, just simply because our worldviews are vastly different. And it's not like if I'm when I was in business, I served everybody.
Yes.
And so I didn't distinguish between people of a liberal ideology or a conservative ideology. Certainly, I had my testimony, and I was happy to share that with people of any persuasion.
Yep.
But government's not like that, and so it's a tug of war.
Yes.
Very
for the
much so.
future of our nation,
And getting more so.
right, exactly.
Very divided.
And there are people who don't value our Constitution. They don't value our liberties, and they would think nothing of undermining our independence, even our parental prerogatives. They want to, even our faith, and undermine that. We learned that with COVID. They want to shut down our churches. Yes. But philosophically, there are people, and I think the Democrats fit into that description, who are diametrically, I almost said diabolically, but diametrically opposed to the things that we recognize
Absolutely.
as being true and faithful. And so, yes, I would be very uncomfortable to draw the unanimous support of people with a whole different worldview.
Oh, and the lady that stood up and spoke, she gave him a glowing speech. The Democrat, I was like, oh, well.
Yeah.
Daniel Horowitz made a comment that absolutely goes along with what you said. He said, in this day and time, and this was the one that was talking about the houses in the different states that are having all kinds of issues. He said, basically, in this day, there is the Uniparty and there is the Freedom Caucus with no in between.
No, I think it's fair. And,
Yeah.
I don't condemn people who don't join the Freedom Caucus, Republicans who don't do that. And first of all, they have to be invited.
Yep.
But we're mostly looking at their voting record, because we don't want disunity in the Freedom Caucus. But I think there's a lot of really good conservatives that are uncomfortable with, and I'll use the word tactics. We do tactics. They're not mean tactics. It's not assaults. It's just basically voting in a block.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, and so if we, if it's a bad idea, if it's a bad bill, we can vote as a block against it, and that makes it harder to get that across.
Yes.
But I don't know why some of my conservative Republican colleagues are uncomfortable by that, except that they think they're forfeiting their opportunity to work with leadership, because that's the threat that's made. And for instance, like voting for Justin Sparks to be the Speaker of the House, there have been repercussions for me.
That was going to be my last question for you.
Right. So
Fallout.
I'm finding out. Yes, and I fully anticipated that there would be some fallout, but yet to me it was a simple thing to do, because I wanted a more conservative House. But
that's what you all say. All of that. You're all alike in that.
Yes.
You don't put your personal ambitions before God and your duty in the House and mostly the people. That is amazing.
Yes.
All of you.
Principle.
All of you that I've spoken to.
Unless I can do the right thing up there, I don't want to be there.
Yes.
Because honestly, I'm a retirement age, and I could enjoy a comfortable retirement, except I'm not doing that. I'm going up there because this desperately needs to be done. Not necessarily done by me, but the numbers of people making the sacrifice to go up there and do that and face this kind of opposition are very small.
Yes. And you're not going to go along with party politics.
No, and so I'm careful not to make myself beholden to people in leadership, because then that's a handle they could use to control me. And yes, I have 30 years in the insurance business, okay, operating in a major insurance franchise. And so that's my area of expertise, in finance, because I'm kind of a left brain guy. And so in the first couple of years, I served on the insurance committee and then the banking committee. and basically
your numbers guy. Yeah,
I've been stripped out of those committees. So and
they're punishing you.
That was intended as punishment. Well, guess what? I don't care. I don't care. Whoever made that decision, the speaker, what he decided to do is to, I guess, what's the word for it? Deprive the people of Missouri of my expertise, what I could bring into that.
Yes.
Well, that's his prerogative. The committees are the speaker's committees.
Yes.
And so that's his prerogative. But to me, it's just illustrative, if I can say it. It represents the common disorders.
Yes.
Up there in Jefferson City. The fact is we're not being smart. We're
right.
not using common sense.
Right.
And basically we're not using the talents that God sends up there
Absolutely.
to their maximum to serve the people's interest.
Absolutely.
And I think a Republican's primary job is protecting your liberties. And to whatever extent our position in doing so is compromised, it's a disservice to the people of Missouri.
Bob, you're such a mugwump.
Yep.
I hate to tell you, but you're a mugwump too. You're principled.
Yes.
It's good.
Yes.
Very good.
A disruptor.
You're a disruptor.
I wish it wasn't necessary, but as long as it's necessary, I'm going to mugwump.
That was kind of where our conversation started, was you were wishing you could be home more.
Yes, absolutely.
You wish there wasn't a need to go up there. And you know what? I think we can get there. I think there's a good thing started, and I think we're going to move in that direction. And I feel God's leading us to better pastures. But there's work to do, and it's going to take not just you going up there and all the other representatives, but it's going to take the people. It's going to take us. We have to get involved. We have to engage. And most of all, the way the church goes, that's how everything's going to go.
Yes, across the board. We just
we'll
need
step
the
up.
citizens, the voters, the taxpayers
Absolutely.
to know better what's going on. And they don't need to know things the way that to the degree that I do, or even you guys are political wonks.
But
they don't need to know it to your
time.
extent either.
We're even having a hard time because we work too. We're still working, and honestly, what I told Mike and I told Bert too, and you too, you're good, man. You're a great texter. If you know something's coming up that I don't know, let me know. We'll get it on the air and tell people who do they need to call, or get their phone number, their email, who they are, and a short message. We could come up with a little short message. Most people want to help, but they really just don't know what to do. Right. But when you explain to them what's on the line and that all they have to do is just pick up the phone, call them, and be done, man, if we got even a small percentage of the public to react and engage and do that, things would change.
It's powerful. Absolutely.
Yes. A megaphone. Yes. They need a megaphone, for sure. Bob, this has been absolutely wonderful. We've enjoyed visiting with you.
Thank you.
This has been great.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for doing this. I know this is not a luxury for you that you're sacrificing and forfeiting we're doing this on a Friday night. We could be out enjoying ourselves, couldn't we? But this is really important. I appreciate.
We're always here.
Okay.
We're here a lot.
Okay.
That if anytime you want to come back and get some information out, you give me a call. And
I certainly will.
We'll have you back in. And if something's needed, just like that text that you sent me about Justin, you said, let everybody know. Come in and what is it? Oh, brother, we're out there talking to the can, singing to the can. All you got to do is just come, just to say, hey, I've got something I'd like to get out, and we'll get it out.
I believe in that. I think that will make a difference as people want to be informed. And I'm eager to provide the information.
You bet. Help keep us updated so we know too.
You bet.
Very good. All right. Well, folks, thank you so much for joining us today. And we're going to be back again soon with more information and news. We hope that you'll join us then. We just keep finding more mugwumps. Man, they're everywhere. There's a bunch of them. There's even a bunch of them up at Jefferson City. That's good news. Folks, enjoy the rest of the day wherever you are. And again, as I've said before, remember, stay in that mugwump state of mind. Always stay informed, inspired, and always stay independent. God bless.